This week on the Legion Clubhouse, the thing you never thought would happen, Lobo's a droid.
They were the heroes from the future, teenagers protecting the universe from those that would sow the seeds of chaos. Each had unique powers and abilities, and though they often had their differences, they came together to save the day as the Legion of Superheroes. Now, you can be a part of their adventures and learn the history of the future in the Legion Clubhouse.
We are at issue number 24, which is, according to what has come in the first 12 issues, this is technically the end of our quote-unquote second season, with big reveals and big things. Supposedly at the end of the last season, the gang got back together. It ended with Legion of Superheroes. And all the questions were answered. Kinda. And so then we start off with the Earth being blown up and the gang getting back together and then blah, blah, blah. And now we get the big reveal that Darkseid is weird.
Darkseid is very weird. I feel like we talked at length about how weird frilly-necked Darkseid is, but this issue just kind of creeps me out, to be honest, because he's in Dr. Campbell's brain at one point, and it doesn't feel like, oh, this is a dream. It feels like Darkseid is literally invading this man's brain while he's having a nightmare. And then we find out that Lobo is actually Probo, which I'm actually happy with, to be honest, because it makes it easier to take what we know about the main man from 1,000 years in the past and take this character who doesn't really seem to be very Lobo-esque. And it kind of sets them apart. But man, this is just like, abandon hope, all ye who enter here. It feels like, you remember Marlon Brando's Island of Dr. Moreau?
Sure, of course.
That's what this feels like. This feels like the island of Dr. Darkseido, as played by Marlon Brando.
Yeah, I don't know if I agree with it. I see where you're coming from, though. It's just, I don't know. So the whole point is that instead of the anti-life equation, Darkseid is going to go with the Jiminy Matrix, and he wants to die. That's what he wants, because, I could think of 100 other ways that we could kill Darkseid.
Yeah. The strong implication here is that he needed something stronger than him to destroy him, and he couldn't find anything easily. A Kryptonian.
Well, Superman shaves by bouncing his heat vision off a mirror. Can't Darkseid do the same thing with his Omega beams? Just shine it onto a really reflective, like obsidian surface and blast himself?
I feel like that sounds like, can't I just hold my breath until I die? At a certain point, I feel like the autonomous systems of your body are going to kick in and just say, no, we're done here. Because, you have to maintain that Omega beam coming out of your Omega face. And at a certain point,
I don't think you have to maintain it. I think it's the instant you get hit by an Omega beam, you're blasted to wherever.
Tartarus. I don't know.
I just think that when we look at Darkseid from, let's say, the 80s or the 90s prior, Darkseid stories have usually been pretty interesting, even when Jack Kirby was doing New Gods and the weirdness that Darkseid was doing. And then we get the Great Darkness Saga, of course. We get Cosmic Odyssey, which that's before this, I believe.
Barely. Yeah. Cosmic Odyssey, I want to say was it 92?
Maybe it was around the same time. I don't know. If it is at the same time that this is going on, that also complicates things. But Cosmic Odyssey 88.
So, no, it was 88.
So before this. So, you get some really big Darkseid moments. And, even with the Legion having to deal with Darkseid, these are pretty big deals. In this case, they land on the planet and Darkseid's like, please come in. Let me show you my horrific plan that I have set up where I'm going to take these two souls and merge them into one because Francis has done this. And, You know this, Brainiac 5, so bear witness to this greatness beyond you. And then he's just like, and that is the end of me. Goodbye, everyone. Whoop, 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 whoop. Darkseid died on the way back to his planet. And it's just like, wow, this is a letdown of an ending for Darkseid.
And it's really complicated because the implication is that Francis Campbell split his single child into two children, theoretically to save their life, but then somehow ended up selling their soul sort of to Darkseid. And it just feels like, for me, it doesn't feel like a win. It doesn't feel like he achieved much because these kids are what, 10, 12?
I think 12.
Yeah. So when Arya and Coda, which by the way are musical terms for a solo song and the concluding passage. Sorry, I had to say it. So Arya and Coda come back. I did. People are out there thinking it. They're like, why don't they mention the Arya and Coda thing?
Because then they would have nothing to gripe about over on our Discord server about each episode that we do. So you gotta give something to the listeners so that they will engage and say, I can't believe you guys didn't mention the Arya Coda connection. Like, it's been so obvious for the whole four. That explains why everyone is dressed like a Renaissance flavored character throughout this whole thing, because it's all the music of the spheres. Duh. By the way, I've been reading the Legion since the Legion started back in 52.
Wow. Back in 52?
Yeah,
52 was 2006.
Yeah, that's when people have been reading the Legion. So yeah. I don't know that this is. So there's so much in this. So there's so much in this that is kind of a letdown, kind of like the final season of Lost. There's so much building up to it that when you finally get to it, it's kind of like, okay, now what? And I guess that means you're going to have to read the next season of this series. But for Darkseid, I really thought that this was not well planned. And I think in hindsight, I probably, as a DC editor, would have said things like Arya and her friend need to be introduced earlier into this conflict, as opposed to this, 4 or 5 issue arc, 4-issue arc that we're getting here at the end, because we need a little bit more clue dropping, hint dropping to really make this an impactful arc. I don't necessarily think that these 12 issues are supposed to be one long story, but they did it the first season. Kind of feels like they're wanting to do it in this next, and I say season, but this next big giant arc of a year of comics. And it feels rushed, and it feels not fulfilling.
It feels to me like a case of, the proverbial too many cooks. You've got Giffen has definitely GIF things to play with, and the Beirbaums have things that are Beirbaum things to play with. And this feels like Al Gordon's baby. And I don't know if it's a question of Al didn't have this idea when they started 24 issues ago, or maybe they didn't think that they wanted to seed it in there, or if it was just, we have to get this and we have to get this and we have to get this. And now we get, okay, we're going to do the 4-part Quiet Darkness. This is Al's, big thing. This is his pièce de résistance. But it feels kind of disconnected, because we didn't have setup before in 16, 17, 18, leading into the 4-part Quiet Darkness. And then once it ends, I don't feel like I'm going to give anything away. Once it ends, it just kind of, that's just what happens. And we have this bit where Darkseid is now dead. It doesn't feel like a Legion story necessarily, and it feels like something where 6 issues from now, I could see Kent and Joe going, hey, do you remember, did we tell anybody that Darkseid just died? Because it feels a little anticlimactic.
Yeah, but even in Brainiac 5's notes at the end is kind of like, I give it 1 paragraph. Maybe it's more like 3 paragraphs, but it's still I gave it a shot. And meanwhile, I'm going to spend even more time talking about Timberwolf and what's going on with Bion.
Right.
So there are some, and so that's, you're right. It's kind of left hanging, and I don't know, just because someone's walking in a bunch of pink clouds, I'm not sure that means that they're dead. I mean, Michael Landon tried to do that, and then they brought him back.
No, wait, that's the Waltons. I feel like it's meant to be.
I mean, I think it is supposed to be, but
because Coda is kind of there, but also I'm not sure, because I thought that Gemini was meant to be the synthesis of Arya and Coda, and it specifically says they have one soul. So
yes.
I don't know if they're walking off into some weird, Judeo-Christian clouds, and they're going to go meet the baby Jesus or whatever. It just, I look at that and I go, it's clearly something that is coded for us as readers, and by us I mean readers of 1992.
Yeah, I think it's supposed to understand. I think it's supposed to be heaven, but it's
some sort of afterlife. But
yeah, and so then we get into this weirdness of what's going on. What's going on with Gemini? The new character, Arya. She's supposedly got her brother in her that they've combined. They've two have become one. So that would lead to her being a non-binary character, even though there have been non-binary characters in comics before. She is not the first one to appear in comics. But then we see Coda walking off into the distance with Darkseid, and it's like, okay, well, maybe she's not. The bigger problem with this is when she is first introduced, she's being chased down by a gang that's been tasked to track her down and bring her back to Darkseid. And they basically are like, yeah, we're going to rape these two little girls. We're not going to damage one of them, but we will rape this 12-year-old, right? The blonde-haired girl, what her name is.
Lori.
Lori.
I keep wondering if she's meant to be Lori Morning, who ends up in the reboot Legion, but also not. So I don't know.
Yeah. But that then becomes problematic, because now with the Gemini Matrix, when it goes off, she's now a full-grown woman. And does she have the intelligence of a full-grown woman, or is this a case of the trope Born Sexy Yesterday, where we have the mind of a child inside the body of a woman, and that brings up some other weird questions? Maybe these were not questions that people thought of back in 1991, but today, especially when people haven't seen the Born Sexy Yesterday video essay on YouTube, but I would encourage you to go and just look it up. Just do a search for Born Sexy Yesterday, and you'll see what I and Rodrigo and others are always talking about. But this is definitely a case of that. Now, we don't know, because there's not much character development of Arya post coming out as Gemini.
Gemini, yeah.
So we don't know if she does have a 12-year-old intellect, or if she is something else. Maybe we'll find out in issue 25. I doubt it.
No, but we do see more of Arya starting, I believe, in annual number 4 and leading into a 5-part Timberwolf series in 93. So more Arya / Gemini is coming, but Arya also is interesting because she sort of just disappears from the DC universe right about the time of 0 Hour, but pops up again in an Al Gordon. Well, they can't say she's Gemini. They can't say she's Arya. They call her Skylark, but she appears in Al Gordon's creator-owned book, Wildstar, where she explains to the hero that she came from 1,000 years in the future, and she always liked the 20th century for some reason, and she's saving him, and of course she's helping him to stop his terrible future from coming around. But it's one of those moments where if you make the connection, and honestly, you'd have to remember Gemini, which a lot of people aren't going to.
Right.
If you make the connection between Gemini and Skylark, it's interesting to see that character kind of go on with the creator to another dimension. Kind of like Steve Englehart took Mantis with him to DC and then to Dark Horse Comics, I believe. Or no, Eclipse Comics. But I love it when characters kind of travel around and you have to write around trademarks and be like, yeah, you know that story? It might have happened. You don't know. No one sue me, please.
We get to the adventures of Bion, which we've talked about this a little bit before. He's basically a Mazo. He's got the DNA of Legion members in him. This was a whole plot by the overseers to kind of control the Legion. And so he's got the ability to track down the Legion members. In fact, they go through again in the back matter bits, all of the Legion members that he is composed of. And, I get it. It makes sense. We're going to build one super creature, man, maybe question mark. Maybe it's a Superman question mark that is going to do whatever we need that needs to get done, but also be a hero. The problem is, what if there's already Legion of Superhero members, whether they are the cloned version or the original version, in the nearby vicinity? How does that affect Bion? And we kind of find out in this issue where he tries to stop Laurel Gand, and she's like, you must come with me. You are property of EarthGov. And she's like, I'm property of no man. And then they fight, and she rips his robot head off. Yeah.
So Bion, I've never been 100% clear whether Bion is an android or some sort of cyborg, but Bion, the biologically integrated organic network, is an artificial being. So we see more Bion, even if this Bion gets their head ripped off. But it is interesting to me that Bion has the same power set as the composite Superman, who was always played as a clown. And here they're trying to play Bion straightforward. And when you have a character who is as strong as 3.5 Kryptonians with the mind of Brainiac 5 and all of the powers of the Legion of Superheroes, they really should be much more competent than Bion is here. I mean, if you're as tough as 2 Daxamites, how did 1 Daxamite rip off your head?
Well, that doesn't happen in this issue, but...
Shh, we won't tell anybody.
Yeah.
But what does happen in this issue?
Well, and so this is also a problem because our main story concludes the end of the Uneventful Darkness saga here. And then we get this Adventures of Bion, and the big reveal is in the backup story of the issue. And it's like, wow, that was put together rather oddly.
Yeah, well, they've been hinting for several issues.
Oh, yeah, we've had young Irish Jimmy Olsen trapped underground, and we've seen all that stuff. So, yeah, I mean, they've been hinting it, but to put it up into the backup story really is weird. And I know it's supposed to be this, I never expected that to happen kind of bump moment. But it kind of doesn't deliver. And I'm sure people reading this back in the time are like, hey, look, the Legion got their original costumes back. And that's supposed to be a big deal. But and again, read the back matter. It explains a little bit more what's going on. But I don't know, it doesn't land as much of the buildup as we've been talking about these last couple of episodes. It doesn't land. It kind of stumbles.
I really feel like it's meant to be a big tease. It's meant to be an, oh my God, how can this be? A bear is driving. But you're right. It does feel a little weird because, first of all, if you have 20 young Legionnaires hiding under the city, you have to ask yourself, why have they not been getting involved in all of the craziness going on up on the surface? And, even if you look at this and you're like, most importantly, and this is entirely grungy nitpicking, and I would apologize for it, but I mean, this is a show for nerds by nerds. This particular lineup of the Legion of Superheroes does not exist. It has to be anachronistic. And that's one of the things that, when we bring up the question of, who's the real team? Who are the real members of the Legion? Unless the Glorith reality has a different joining/dying order, these 20 Legionnaires would not have served together in this configuration.
How is Pharaoh Lad in here with, is that Element Lad? They weren't in the team at the same time, were they?
And at this point in time, if Pharaoh Lad is alive, Matter Eater Lad is fat.
Yeah.
remember, Matarito Lad gained a bunch of weight and didn't get that weight removed until, I want to say, Adventure 350.
Well, but I mean, this is a we're. I mean, if we're making clones, we can tinker with their DNA so that they're all permanently 12-year-olds.
And these are the Legionnaires after. So it has to be after the debut of the 4, and of course the Nemesis Kid betrayal.
One and of also the probably the Computo, probably the Computo element as well, because that's not Triplicate Girl, that's Duo Damsel.
Well, that's another thing. So yes, this would be after the death of Triplicate Girl's 3rd, but she is Triplicate Girl. Now, does any of that matter? No, because for 2 years, readers have seen this 35-year-old grizzled beardo, we have no costumes, we have no code names, Legion. And if you've been a person reading the book, and I remember reading the book and being a little like, this feels weird. I'm enjoying what it is, but it doesn't feel like it traditionally like a superhero narrative. It feels like a Star Wars comic.
Yeah.
To have the 20, teenagers in their bright costumes, and to see for the first time Laurel's cute as heck Mon-El costume with a little pleated cheerleader skirt, that's neat. I have to admit, it is neat. And I do remember reading this issue and going, what the heck? But yes, I agree with you. It does come off as more of an anticlimax.
Well, and I think it's anticlimactic because I'm looking at this in hindsight. And if you were reading this when the issues originally dropped, like so many people in the Discord server have, I can see this being a big moment where you're like, oh, wow. But even then, I would then say, but why is this a backup story? This should have been the front and center bit, as opposed to the long goodbye of Darkseid. And I get it. You've got different creators working on these things. Al Gordon is doing The Quiet Darkness, and the Beirbaums are doing their thing. And it's all supposed to be shocking, so that by the time you get to the end of that, you want to make sure that you send in your $12 so that you can get all of the Legion comics next year through the mail. But in hindsight, it really, doesn't work. It doesn't work. And I'm sure that as the issues go forward, there's going to be some scrambling to try to answer a lot of the questions that you and I have right now to say, oh, well, the reason why Pharaoh Lad is here is because of blah, blah, blah. And Glorith, the reason why Supergirl is really Laurel Gand is because of Glorith's manipulation with time and blah, 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 which also brings up a bunch of other questions, which hopefully get answered in an upcoming annual.
If you enjoy the show, we would appreciate your support. You can find out more and become a Legion Clubhouse member at patreon.com/major spoilers.
All right. So before we get into, because I know we've had a little break here, and people furiously typing, I did not hate issue number 24. I just was wanting something big and grand, kind of like what we had at the end of issue 12, where it was just like big and bold. But one of the questions that I had over the last couple of episodes is, why do people keep calling Valor father? Why are they acting like he has seeded all the planets? And we get that answer in the Legion of Superheroes Volume 4, Annual Number 2. And
the legend of Valor.
So while I appreciate and I'm okay with issue number 24, I did not like this annual. One bit. Like, not at all. I was like, what a glorious mess this thing is.
The thing about Legion of Superheroes Volume 4 Annual Number 2 is that it is a massive lore dump. And it is designed to answer questions that, I feel like in modern storytelling terms, and we do look at this from the concepts of the era, but in modern storytelling terms, this should have been a 6-issue arc. This should have been a big thing and not, the Dark Circle telling stories. By the way, it's good to see that Ontier is still the head of the Dark Circle.
Yeah.
Later on, he'd go on to lead Cobra. What's with a man? Okay, so that bugs me. The layout of this and the explanation that the Dark Circle is talking about this because they're going to want to wipe out the bright legend of Valor. When we take it as Valor is very obviously meant to be Superboy, to take over where Superboy left off in inspiring the Legion, I'm sort of fine with it.
Oh, I'm fine with just
also,
saying, hey, Valor came to Earth and, as a young man and was discovered by the Kents, who had no adopted son or no Krypton ever existed. And they raised him as his own. And he basically was an adult already being taught the ways of the Earth and the good values of Earthlings while he tried to keep those around him safe. And thus he created this ideal Superman, even though he's not a Superman, somebody with a lot of valor to go out and protect the worlds, and that inspired the Legion. I'm good with that. I have no problem with that. That's a one-page flashback that you could do.
Right.
And his secret identity instead of the Kents is always going to be Bob Cobb. That's all fine. He was a Fuller brush salesman back in the 1950s, and he would go from town to town trying to sell his Fuller brushes. And each time he got there, he would find some injustice that needed to be done, and he would teach some valuable lesson at the end. And then it would always end with somebody going, "Get out of my house! I told you I don't want to buy a toilet brush." I would have been all okay with that. That would expand the story out to like 3 pages. But I would be okay if it was just that. But this thing is so weird that it's there's part of it that's like the Starbelly Sneeches are going on in here where the Dominators are like, no, we decided we wanted to be the Diamond Heads instead of the Circle Heads. And then you've got this whole team up going on of all of these people to overthrow the Dominators, and they end up helping to seed all these planets. It's like, yeah, you're right. That should all be a mini series, not whatever this is.
Well, and this does roll out of the Invasion miniseries from '89, where the Dominators came to Earth and exploded gene bombs and experimented on humans. So basically, in the future, all of these planets where everybody is essentially a metahuman now have sort of an explanation. And it's funny to me that this is coming out in '91 because it wasn't too long after this that Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Yeah, that was actually a really good episode, though. It was maybe not.
The thing about it, though, is once again, this falls to me under the heading of explaining things that don't necessarily need to be explained, because for me, it kind of takes you out of it. It takes that moment of, why are all of these alien races bipedal humanoids with one head? And the answer is because they're being created by bipedal humanoids with one head. And unlike Star Trek: The Next Generation, we can have blue people and orange people and yellow people and people like Doubleheader, who actually has 2 heads. But this story explaining why all of these characters come from planets that look like Earthbound humanoids feels like everybody got that. It feels like a moment of, we have to do this because we're trying to transition into harder science fiction, and we're maybe a little bit ashamed of the silly stuff from 1962. And I've never been down with that. I feel like you should just live with it. Sometimes things are silly and frivolous and maybe even, I don't know, goofy, and that's perfectly fine. But you also do have to ask yourself, like, for instance, one of the planets that is specifically called out is the planet Geekwo. Now, Geekwo is important because Apollo, a character based on Earth Greek mythology, comes from planet Geekwo. He was one of Evillo's original Devil's Dozen back in '64.
Yeah.
That makes sense to me, because why would an alien planet have Earth mythology?
Greek gods,
Makes perfect sense.
Why would Nazis be living on an alien planet?
What does God need with a starship? And then you know, certain planets aren't mentioned here. Karg is not mentioned, or Karg is mentioned.
Karg is mentioned.
Yeah. Imsk is not mentioned.
No.
Braille is not mentioned.
But Imsk wouldn't be because it's in another dimension.
No, you're thinking of Bug Tussle.
Oh, right.
Yeah, Imsk is the planet that grows. But we've also seen Imskians were part of the invasion and had shrinking powers in 89. So the Imskians and the Daxamites and certain others could not be seeded by Mon-El.
Yeah.
But Wynneth, where the lightning
but
lad
technically they're not
from,
really seeded by Mon-El.
Well, okay, so seeded by people who were inspired by Mon-El.
Yeah.
But, so we know Bismol, the Banner Eater lad people, Karg, the triplicate people, Janus, where Doubleheader comes from, the heroes of Lalor, Mullane, who showed up for literally 2 panels in Adventure 324. Mullane was a planet that destroyed itself in a nuclear explosion. Myrna, the home of the Noble Braino. Do you remember a few issues ago where Polar Boy was dressed up as Noble Braino?
Yeah.
Prove he was insane? Yeah. Samatter, which is the home of Infectious Lass, and yes, that's how it's pronounced. Samatter? Nothing's the matter. What's the matter with you? Wynneth, the home of the Lightning Twins, and Zwen, where Stone Boy comes from, where everybody must get stoned. All of those are explicitly called out as descended from 20th century metahumans left over from the invasion. And that's great until you have to go, well, what about the people they forgot about? What about a world, Imsk is definitely not involved at this point, but what about I don't know, where Cthulhu, where Lita Jath, Night Girl, comes from? What's with Cthulhu?
Well, but we know because there's already a blue guy that's part of the team, so that would already be a populated planet, right? So
that's
the whole planet. No, they're the same person.
They're not
the whole thing. The whole thing that Mon-El is trying to do, though, is saying, hey, we're going to seed these planets that are the barrier between the Dominator's homeworld and Earth. So there could be other planets that are on the other side of that whole thing.
Defend it.
That are there, but it's a defense mechanism, and it's just like
the Romulan neutral zone.
This is yes, it is very much the Romulan neutral zone, but man, they had to go a long way to tell this story. I mean, this really could have been a Legion Omnicon entry, the history of Valor, or somebody sitting down and saying, "Oh, hey, I just found this Valor data tape. Let's see what's on it," and then it's just a page of text that explains all of this. Would be much more satisfying than Starbelly Sneech's Uprising and I Am the Progenitor of Worlds, because Glorith sent me into the impossible zone.
Right. We do get the explanation, since there was no Krypton and not no Krypton, but there was no Superboy for Bob Cobb to try and impress and get poisoned. Mon-Val, was stuck in the Bug Tussle buffer zone because he rebuked the affections of Glorith of Balder, which is honestly super petty. And I love that. You tortured this. Literally, she says, I'll see you in 1,000 years. She stuck him in limbo for 1,000 years because he would not be her consort. That I think is a really nice character moment for Glorith, in that, you know how the Time Trapper was this hard case evil thing from the future. Glorith is just kind of a, I don't know, omnipotent dream girl. She's just like, la-di-da-di, I do what I want. And I really do appreciate that explanation of the Bug Tussilian buffer zone in place of the Kryptonian Phantom Zone. So
the one thing that was really weird to me was where Ultra Boy shows up, and we know that he was blasted into the past, but are they trying to say that at some point Ultra Boy went and met Valor and had adventures with him, and maybe those should be in a book somewhere? It's just this whole thing just, I mean, I'm glad I read it. Well, maybe I'm not glad I read it. I'm glad it exists for somebody. It just doesn't exist for me to enjoy, because as you so often say, they're trying to answer questions that nobody asked.
And there is going to be more Valor coming.
Hey, that's great. Valor gets his own series coming up, or if it's not already, he's got that.
93. Yeah, Valor #1 shows up in, I think, 93. And so when we get to it, there are some issues of Valor that we're definitely going to have to look at. Much as with Karate Kid, I feel like there are some that just have no real Legion relevance other than starring Valor, but probably more than half of Valor's 20-issue run is going to have to be part of Legion Clubhouse.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind that. Just like when we get to it, the Legionnaires books are going to have to be read.
Yep.
So, I don't have a problem with reading Valor. It's just like, maybe this could have all been told in the Valor series. Made it a 24-issue run, a maxi series, which DC was all about the maxi series in the late 80s, early 90s, right? That's what they classified Crisis on Infinite Earths, this maxi series, that they could have just done a 24-issue run and said, this is 24 issues only, and we will tell you everything you need to know about Valor. Trust us. This is going to be a story that you're going to want to stick around and read, and just have it run concurrently with the Legion and Legionnaires for 2 years through 0 Hour, etc. It all would have been, I think, a much better read. I know I would have enjoyed it as opposed to just getting these weird snippets, but this is something that I just did not enjoy at all. And it's not because I didn't enjoy the answer that we get to why everyone thinks Valor is great, but I didn't enjoy it just because it was just like smashing so much stuff together that it's just like hitting you with, as you said, an info dump and not letting you have a moment in the issue to process it.
It's a wall of exposition. And honestly, when I say, hey, Ontier, when that is one of my big takeaways, that, a minor lizard creature from 1978 is still in play in the modern Legion circa 1992 or 91, I guess. We're still in late 91. That's not necessarily a big selling point. I will say that I did enjoy digging up where all the planets were, because even I did not remember Mullane. But it's also one of those explanations. You keep talking about how we get to the deepest of deep cuts. The Beirbaums love them some deep cuts. This issue is all deep cuts. And maybe we got the 4 issues of Al's take alone. And this is like a big double issue of Tom and Mary alone. And I feel like those first 12 issues that were Tom and Mary and Al and Keith were the most successful. And maybe, much like the Legion, this creative team works best as a unit. I don't know.
Maybe. I guess we'll find out, because that's where we're going to wrap it up now. Dear listener, what did you think when you, especially for those of you that read it originally, what did you think when you hit the big reveal that the Legion is back, or when you discovered how Valor was seeding all the worlds? Head over to the Major Spoilers Discord server, jump into the Legion Clubhouse channel and chat. There's been so much chatter since our last episode. I really enjoy seeing that. I really do. I really enjoy Legion fans going in and sharing their ideas, their thoughts, their reactions, their theories, etc. It's really cool to see that, and I'm glad that everybody does it in a very respectful way, as opposed to just coming in and going, oh, you're all duty heads because you didn't mention Arya and Coda. You guys are great and awesome, and we're glad that you're part of our Legion community. Next time on the Legion Clubhouse, though, we are going to see what happens when the Legion awake with no clothes, and we're going to see what happens when Andromeda, Laurel Gand, gets in a fight with Bion, or Bion. We'll figure it out eventually. Thank you.
The Legion Clubhouse is a production of Major Spoilers Entertainment, LLC, and is produced by Steven Schleicher. Your hosts were Matthew Peterson and Steven Schleicher. You can follow Matthew at Mighty King Cobra and Steven at Major Spoilers. You can follow this podcast on Twitter at Legion Clubhouse. If you have questions or comments, send them to podcast@majorspoilers.com. I'm Jason Inman. Until next time, eat it, Grandpa.
This podcast is copyright 2025 by Major Spoilers Entertainment, LLC.